This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we are two Syracuse-based sports reporters. Be sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. It really helps us out when you do that. Today, we're joining you with some breaking news. We are saying so long to an old friend, a true old friend, in Brandon Nimmo, someone who has been with the Mets for a very long time. He is headed to the Texas Rangers. How are we feeling, Ashley?
A lifelong friend departs us on this Sunday evening. Brandon Nimmo is no longer in New York. The longest tenured Met on the team, 10 seasons in Queens. I mean, you knew some things were going to start happening with the hot stove across baseball, right? Forget about with just the Mets. But this news hitting our timelines at about 5:20 Eastern time, a little Jeff Passenbaum, I was not expecting this on my particular Sunday night.
Not at all. I think you were talking about, Alonso and McNeil, which I think is definitely still in play here. But Nimmo was someone who, at least for me, I felt like was one of the cornerstones of this team. That being said, how frequently have we discussed the fact that something was off about the Mets? That's not me saying that what was off with the Mets had anything to do with Brandon Nimmo, but let's even say that it didn't. Big, significant things needed to change here. And if you are a Mets fan, what you want most is for this team to win a World Series, right?
Yeah. I mean, the core was going to be broken up this offseason to some degree. We all knew it. It was sort of like we were just waiting for that first domino to fall. I mean, I think I said the last time we were sitting here on our last episode, I didn't particularly want it to be Brandon Nimmo. Now, we're going to get into the pros and cons. I think there's an emotional attachment here for Mets fans because he has been on this team for so long. But then when you separate the emotion from maybe the reality, you realize that the Mets dumping his contract is maybe not the worst idea ever. So we can get into it. But Nimmo and DeGrom, how about that? Together again in Texas. It is worth noting that Nimmo had to waive his full no-trade clause. He had to sign off on this deal, approve of this deal. All I'll say is I'm not particularly surprised that Brandon Nimmo would maybe want to move to the state of Texas. And I'll leave it at that.
In the climate in New York City at this time.
Yeah.
I understand. I'm sure there's a lot that goes into it. He did what he ultimately thought was right for him and his family, but I agree. I think in some way it was a little bit shocking, at least, just in the sense that I really felt like he, of all people, loved being a Met.
Yeah.
It does raise some questions, honestly, even beyond what we just discussed. Was he as happy there as he was in the beginning? Did he just like the idea of going to Texas better, or did he feel like there was a better chance at long-term success there? I'm not sure, but you do kind of wonder the inner workings of how that all shook out.
Well, it's certainly interesting for him to waive the full no-trade clause. Maybe we'll find out one day the reasoning behind that. Maybe we won't. But 2 years ago, when he signed that big extension, he got up there and said he wanted to be a Met for life. I don't think Brandon Nimmo is a disingenuous guy. I don't think he was saying that just to say that. Obviously, at the time, it was like an 8-year deal. So, for him to be open and welcome to a departure, I think is interesting, to say the least. First, I'm going to get my crash out of the way because I'm not going to lie. My initial reaction to this news was sort of emotional. Nimmo's a guy that, again, we're very young, although some commenter said last week, he was like, girls, you aren't that young. So
I'm not going to lie, that was a banger.
That was
funny. That was funny.
In the scheme of baseball fandom, we are pretty young.
How old is that guy?
Yeah,
comment that.
Literally. Anyways, Brandon Nimmo, a guy that both of us sort of grew up on, right? Like, I remember very vividly when the Mets drafted Brandon Nimmo out of Wyoming. It was a whole big thing in 2011 in the draft. 13th overall pick, first rounder, because they don't play high school baseball in Wyoming. So it was just a really interesting. The Mets drafted Brandon Nimmo off of like American Legion stats, which is so rare. I remember the whole video of like David Wright calling him up at the time and like welcoming him to the team. This is a guy that has been in New York for a decade, has been a cornerstone of this team through multiple eras, right? Maybe the last guy on that roster that played with David Wright. I don't think that's true. I think one or two of them did, but you get the idea. He's spent multiple eras. He was there in 2015. He was there, obviously, last year for the NLCS run. He was one of just 11 players to play in over 1,000 games in Queens. I mean, this is a guy that was on his way, not there yet, but on his way, if he were to play the remainder of that contract, the next 6 years in New York, he could have broken multiple Mets offensive franchise records. He might have overtaken David Wright for the all-time hits record. He was certainly on a pace to do that. Like, there is a world where in 10 years, we were watching number 9 go up into the rafters at Citi Field, retired as a number of a great Met, a great position player who spent his entire career in Queens.
Yeah, you put from SNY, which I think it is good to just take a little walk down memory lane for a second. You mentioned he was drafted out of Wyoming, 13th overall pick in the 2011 draft. Gets called up to the big leagues in 2016. He hit .263 with 17 home runs and an .886 OPS in 2018. That leads to him signing an 8-year, $162 million contract with the Mets after that season. Beyond that, his first career postseason home run against the Phillies in Game 2 of the 2024 NLDS, and then he tied the Mets single season. I actually remember this. He tied the Mets single game RBI record with 9 in a game against the Nationals this year in April. That was a crazy game. He really, I mean, I think when you think about baseball, you think about how hard it is to be a consistent player in every sense of that word. To me, when I think about Brandon Nimmo, I think at least to some degree about consistency. I think he is a clubhouse guy and generally speaking has had positive vibes. That's something I appreciated. I think he's someone who really worked hard on this team. I'm sure that you've noticed this, but how I will remember Brandon Nimmo above all else is the fact that he was the guy who hustled to first base when he got walked.
Yes.
That matters to me,
in
man.
that leadoff spot.
Never forget the hustle after the walk. Those kinds of players are special. And something about that is where kind of my emotions come into play, where I'm like, isn't that a guy who you'd want to keep in New York? But like you said, I think that there was a two-way street situation here. He wanted to leave. They needed to get rid of him. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, he's one of those top of the order guys, right? I mean, brings the energy, brings the spark at the top of the lineup, brings the power to a degree. Last year, the guy hit 25 home runs, right? Brings some pop in your lineup. And I think he was a leader in that clubhouse, even in a way, more so in a way that many people maybe thought. I think kind of behind Lindor, it was sort of Brandon Nimmo. At least that's the feeling that I've gotten for the last couple of years, because like we said, he was the longest tenured Met. He predates Lindor. He certainly predates Soto and even guys like Alonso. So his stats as a Met through 10 seasons, which is the entirety of his career stats, 262 hitter, 802 OPS, 974 hits, 135 home runs, and 463 RBI. Steve Gelbs hopped on like the SNY Twitter and like did a little video from home, you know, Sundays. Sure. Steve's like watching the NFL. He said, quote, Brandon Nimmo was a great Met, a prideful Met, someone who I talked often about with him, his legacy as a Met. And when he put that uniform on, he really did look at himself as somebody that not just would be a leader of this team for years to come, but somebody that one day might have his number 9 in the rafters retired. Again, I don't know if we're gonna know. This is not me sitting here trying to stir up drama and say that something went starkly wrong, but I mean, something didn't go right with him in the Mets front office, right? Because if 2 years ago he wants to be a Met for life, if he sees his legacy as a Met forever, and then all of a sudden he's waiving his no-trade clause, it raises some questions.
I mean, some questions to say at the very least.
More questions than answers.
So here's where we're going to turn our attention and say, well, what exactly did the Mets get out of this? So the answer is, as Ashley puts it, a 35-year-old. She did not skip out on that part.
35 years.
A 35-year-old Marcus Semien. It was a one-for-one trade. Some people are saying they like that. Some people are saying they hate that. How did you feel instantly, and how do you feel now?
Instantly, I hated it. I'm not gonna lie, I hated it. I saw this trade, so I have my post notifications on Twitter for Jeff Passan, which is a rarity. I don't post notifications a lot for me. I only need like the top heavy hitters. I probably have like 10 people, just like the top dogs in each whatever. So whenever I read a Passan alert, I think I saw the Semien part of it first, and then I saw New York Mets, and then I saw Brandon Nimmo, and I was like, oh shit, like, oh, this is serious. Yep. You know what I mean? I hated it at first. Like you said, Semien, 35. I've come around to acceptance in the past hour or so. We're only filming this like an hour or two after this has happened. There are some pros here, and I think it makes sense with the vision that David Stern sort of outlined at the end of last season and again at the GM meetings a couple of weeks ago. in terms of turning towards a more defensively focused team. They do shed some money. Nimmo had 5 years, $101 million left on his deal. Semien has 3 years, $72 million left. So they're getting rid of some money. They're essentially, though, trading what was a middle of the order, power at times bat, consistent hitter in the lineup for an elite defender. Now you put Marcus Semien at second base and him combined with Francisco Lindor at shortstop. That's one of the best double play duos in baseball.
Well, right. I don't know. I can't sit here and necessarily say that I'm thrilled or that I'm happy because I have to see what they continue to do now. All of this entire trade, what it's going to depend on for me is how they are able to use this and leverage this situation and make further moves. I know that it was a one-to-one trade, but I think if you're a Mets fan and you're feeling a little bit upset about this right now or you're feeling a little bit uneasy, the advice that I would give to fans who are feeling that way is don't necessarily view this as just a one-to-one trade. View this as one chess move in a part of David Stern's larger game that he's playing. Now, do I still feel the same way I did when David Stearns was first with the New York Mets organization, where I have my full trust in him? Maybe not. I don't know yet, but let's see what else they do. Now, are they going to get rid of Jeff McNeil?
Yeah.
Are they going to bring in somebody who I really like in the outfield, right? That is where this is all going to matter, is what are they able to do with the extra money that they do have now, right?
David Stearns opened the door today. I think it was like he had his hand on the handle and he finally cracked it open because you sort of know that this move is the beginning to a domino effect for the Mets, both in the outfield and beyond. Yeah, you're going to see some change. So like I said, defensively, Andy Martino said his reasoning, elite defensive second baseman, you free up a corner outfield spot. Nimmo played left field last year primarily. More flexibility to add an outfielder this winter in free agency. Now you can get somebody, you can replace Nimmo with somebody in one of those corner outfield spots. Maybe you move Soto around, who is another power bat. But Semien's just straight up not going to give you what Nimmo gave you in the lineup. And so that also signals to me that they are in the market for another power bat. I mean, Brandon Nimmo could easily go to Texas and hit 25, 30 home runs again this year.
Yep.
You need to replace that pop somewhere, in particular if you don't re-sign Pete Alonso. Semien in 2025 hit 230, 15 home runs, 62 RBIs, 11 stolen bases. That was a limited sample size. He was hurt for some of the year. Played in just 127 games. But his defense is his calling card. He won a Gold Glove last season, and I thought this was interesting. 54 defensive runs saved since 2021. That's the second most among any second baseman in baseball during that time.
That's remarkable.
David Stearns, true to his word here, prioritizing that defense.
And I also think the fact that it is 3 years, what all of this indicates to me is that the Mets are still committed to win now mode. They are trying to win as soon as possible. They feel and earnestly believe that last year was a fluke, and they think that with the lineup that they do have, the talent that they have, that they will be able to win a World Series in the next 3 to 5 years. But that's also what they said 5 years ago. So that's going to be the issue, right? Again, he is 35, so it is hard to say how many more of those years is he able to pump out. I think if you are a Rangers fan right now, you are looking at this and thinking, long term, we just won something. I'm not going to say the Mets got fleeced because I totally agree with you that there are some positives here and some pros in the short term. If that actually works.
Yeah, right.
If not, then I don't know. I think long term, the Rangers probably won out at least slightly.
To be honest, yeah, good deal for the Rangers, to be honest.
Great deal for the Rangers. And I think that that's what they needed, right? I feel like they have a lot of younger guys. I think some veteran leadership would work there. Good deal for the Rangers for sure. So let's kind of bring it back to the initial point. Moving forward, what does this trade signal to you? Because everybody wanted to say this is a, one-for-one trade. But if you know David Stearns the way that we both do, you know he's never necessarily thinking like that.
It's not so clean cut. One for one's nice, except like I said, this is a signal. This is a flag from David Stearns saying, welcome to the hot stove. First of all, I mean, you already said this. I think it signals to me definitively Jeff McNeil's out. I mean, Jeff, you better start packing your bags, maybe put up the for sale sign on the house. I don't know, but Jeff McNeil is not going to be a Met next year.
But I'm going to be honest, like that's a good part of this deal for me.
No, and I'm thrilled about that. As I've been saying all off season long. It's time for Jeff to go. I'll show him the door personally myself.
Not the for sale sign. That was just wrong.
Sorry. Maybe contact a realtor.
No,
anyway,
literally, that's what I was thinking.
Anyway, Jeff McNeil's a goner, especially now if you've plugged the second base. I don't want to say it's been a hole the past few years because that would be incorrect. McNeil at times has provided you with stability, but with the musical chairs situation that they were doing with these, I don't even think you can call them prospects anymore, younger guys last year, that has now come to a close. Marcus Semien is going to be your everyday second baseman. So that also means to me, if your name is Luis Angel Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio, or Brett Beatty, I don't think Brett Beatty out of all those three, just to say, I would like to say not probably Brett. But any of those three, I mean, I think they're on the chopping block also, the trading block. I think this means that they're going to take them, but meaning the Mets and David Stearns, a package of those players. Maybe it's Mauricio with some pitching prospects. Maybe you throw Acuna in there. And they're going to try to land a really high caliber ace level pitcher.
100%. I agree with that. And I think, listen, it could also, like you said, they're going to have to find someone in the outfield. They're going to have to find a bat here.
Kyle Tucker, please.
For instance. I saw someone throw out today Fernando Tatis Jr. Do you think that's possible at all?
Maybe.
I mean, who's to say? You want to talk about electric? My goodness gracious, that would be fantastic.
See, Kyle Tucker has headlined my list this offseason in terms of like the dream scenario for who they're signing for a corner outfield spot. But then it's like you see the headlines, hello Dodgers fans, if any of you have stuck around this long, that the Dodgers are going to pay him $400 million. And I don't really think the Mets want to pay Kyle Tucker $400 million, to be honest.
The Dodgers.
God.
Yeah. Them. Okay.
Anyway.
We'll deal with that problem later.
We'll circle back.
I can't talk about them right now. They're always infiltrating my thoughts.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, listen, I think in this trade, you're just going to have to be a little patient, trust a little bit in the vision, and see. And I will say, this is kind of my concluding thought, but one thing I have thought about a lot in the past few months, as I have reflected on the way that this past season ended, was why did it end that way? The question really is why. The why is what I'm trying to figure out.
The why of it all.
The why of it all when they did have such a talented team. So if they did have a talented team and they did have great bats, I mean, pitching is a part of it. That's a part of the why. But why not improve your defense? I sort of like that strategy. I'm not mad at that strategy, and I understand what he's trying to do. That being said, the best defense in the world can do Zippo against a bunch of home runs. Zilcho, you know what I mean? We're going to need some different pitching in there as well, and that I think collectively could fix the why.
My closing thought is I have talked myself off the ledge for my initial reaction.
Oh, thank God. I need you here tomorrow.
Honestly, this podcast has been largely me convincing myself that this is not the worst thing I've ever seen because, like I said, I hated it when I first saw it. I think it has the potential to maybe not be great. I think any Mets fan, like I just said, if they see Brandon Nimmo hitting 30 home runs in Texas next year, Mets fans might be upset. But I see the long-term goal. I do agree some stuff had to change and some stuff had to be shaken up. But the bottom line is your heart hurts a little bit today, right? This is a guy who's a Met for 10 years. That's a whole decade. A guy that spent his entire career, was drafted by the Mets. Anytime one of those trades happens, it hurts a little bit.
You know how I know I'm not sold on this? Because if you're a Rangers fan right now, you're thinking that was a good deal. If you're us, you have to come on this podcast and be like, even though it was a one-for-one trade, but you have to think beyond that.
You have to think into the
future. There has to be like 3 ifs. And if that all goes right and they do win a World Series, then it was a good trade. So it might not have been a good trade. It's a lot of explaining.
Yeah.
And I think if there's less explanation, then it's just a good trade as it stands.
Right.
So I'm not going to over-explain. I'm going to let the trade speak for itself, and we'll ultimately see what happens. Beyond that, everyone enjoy your Sunday night. I totally agree. We will take a little moment for Brandon Nimmo and just close out by saying we appreciated you, and thank you for being the kind of player that led not with your words, but with your actions. Good luck in Texas, my friend. We'll see you back here when the next big thing happens.